Hello there, and welcome to 360 Chats. And this morning we have a special guest, Pamela Windle. Pamela Windle owns her own business. She's her own entrepreneur, does lots of things. So I'm going to introduce you. Hello, Pam.
Hello.
Welcome to 360 Chat.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So I know what you do, and I know you're a hormones specialist, but you do lots of other things. Please tell us what you do and what it's all about.
Yeah, so I primarily work with women in the age of early 40s and up to sort of mid 50s, heading towards 60. They're kind of my main clients who may be struggling with hormones, particularly if that woman's transitioning into perimenopause, so she's 40 something and menopause isn't in her mind at that particular time. She's way too young, but nonetheless she's having some symptoms of hormonal changes, and she might have gone to the GP and requested some blood tests and everything's come back as normal. No, you're not perimenopause, yet she feels like there is something significantly wrong. She's struggling with anxiety, sleep, and energy, for example. And, they come see me and we do a few tests, or sometimes we don't do tests, and we basically recreate balance, and therefore she isn't perimenopause. She is, but she's not as close as she probably thought she was. And then there's the other woman that's 50 something who is heading into menopause much closer, and then we try to create balance then as well, using nutrition, lifestyle, and also sometimes targeted supplements. So my background is that I'm a personal trainer. That was my original sort of profession for many years, and I taught so many different classes, from body pump to spin to aqua aerobics, which I loved, and I was a PT as well. And oh my goodness, I've worked with dependent drinkers in the NHS. I've trained as a hypnotherapist and NLP, and do some psychotherapy tools as well. And I'm a women's health coach, and I think, that's it really. That's my education and experience over the years.
Well, it's fair to say that you've got a lot of experience in the background now. I must admit, when you first said about you working with independent drinkers, I thought it was some pub crawl thing that you were talking about at first. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that.
It's not.
So in regards to menopause, it's interesting that it usually is an attraction to people who are either going through it at the time or someone they know is going through it. But it doesn't seem to be very much awareness in the younger age. Is that something you feel it's happening right now?
You're absolutely right. In fact, I remember going to a talk on Made in Nottingham, and I was waiting downstairs to be taken upstairs to the actual broadcasting room. And the lady that came to collect me, I was talking about the menopause. She went, "Oh, you're much younger than I thought you would be." As if somehow my age or the way I look, I shouldn't be actually talking about the menopause. Wow. Which I thought was really interesting. It's classed as something that, particularly my mum's generation, it's something we didn't talk about. It's something that just happened and you just kind of glossed over it. Not that you can prepare for it. And in your 20s and 30s, the decisions you make then can impact your menopause experience. And, it's not talked about at all. And in fact, I started investigating the menopause or perimenopause before I'd had any symptoms at all. So in my early 40s, my elder sister had hot sweats, and I was like, "Oh, I know what this is, but I don't know about it, and therefore I want to read about it and see if I can prepare for it." And guess what? You can.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's interesting then. That seems to be the same for most things. I mean, as you know, I'm a fertility coach. And no one seems to know anything about the fertility side of things until actually they get to that point of planning having a family. And it makes me
Mm-hmm.
wonder then, if something we could talk about collaborating, going into schools and actually educating and trying to insist that they put it into their maybe into their sex education programs, talking about the hormones and what to prepare now, not wait until later where, you know, they're looking for the desperation, if it were. And they're looking for, you know, they're looking for the Pams out of this world to save their life, if you like. I mean, I know that sounds really extreme, but it's not, is it? You know, they've got to a point, and I don't want to go too dark, but I do know many women have fallen into dark depression over, you know, the hormone issues. Listen, if I have a cold or a flu, I've had it, you know, and I can imagine my wife's had for the last 10 years. And I'm so shocked how long it lasts, but why do I never hear about it? And it seems like women are very quiet on that. Is it something, is that normal? Women are normally quiet about it, you don't get to hear it much?
I think up until now, in the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years, women didn't talk about it. I think there's some shame about it. I think there's the stigma around aging. So, and you know, years ago, if you search any sort of cartoon characters, if you put that into Google, menopause and cartoon characters, there's some really derogative things out there, right. You know, and it's made light-hearted. Oh, she's just having a moment, or this aggression that she's experiencing, or the hot flushes, you know, and the lack of libido. And I think years ago, women really had a bad time because they were seen as less than, because of their phase in life. And, you know, men left them, husbands left them, women lost jobs as a result of it. So I think there's some shame about being in that phase of life. And obviously the symptoms are real, and they are, for some women, quite debilitating and crippling. And, you know, you lose your self-esteem and who you are. So there's a lot to go to in this time, but there's also a lot to gain. But I think that, you know, we need to change that. Women are talking more openly now about it, and I feel really privileged to be educated in what women can do to champion this new way of dealing with our hormonal changes in all phases of life, during pregnancy, puberty, you know, and then beyond in perimenopause and menopause. And I think, you know, this is kind of the latter to do, really. We're kind of talking about it openly. I don't know whether it's because I'm sort of connected with other people that are talking it openly, whether it really is changing or it's not. I don't know, but I feel like it is changing.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I really don't know about the, apart from through my wife, in regards to the changes, as they're called, as we will call it generally. But the younger generation definitely are more open. And that younger generation, maybe up to about 30 years plus, you know, up to 30, they are more open and talk, and there's no inhibitions about those things, especially equality, the inclusivity. It's been not introduced, but is so much better now than it ever has been. I think that improves it, but I still feel that when they get to the point when they need to know the information, they have to go out and buy a book and find out this information. And why were they not educated in school with this? You know, and being warned about, not so warning is the wrong word, but being educated to understand if they're understanding sex education, then understand sex education is about your hormones and the change, and men need to know about that as so much as well, because when we come into work and if we want this kind of equality, and there is, what's the word for it, when we're talking about not just equality but making sure things are enabled for women as well in the workplace. So, you know, if they've got babies, they've got a private place, room to go into. There is a word for it, it's gone out of my head. But if they're having these kind of sort of challenges, then there should be things there to support women, you know, because it would be if it were men. if we had problems, we certainly would have had those in hundreds of years ago. So maybe you know, doing that. So okay, you know, this is something you do, and I know you're very passionate about a lot of other things. We could be here all day, but I'm aware that you went also on a what was it? It was in Nottingham for the BLM. I can't remember the date it happened, when there was the protest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you were attending the protest. Now that's, for me, I think was a very brave thing to do. We were in the epidemic at the time, but just tell me your thoughts on why you felt you had to go out there and join the protest.
I felt that I could not be there at all. It wasn't. I just felt like I didn't have a choice. And obviously I did have a choice, but for me, it felt so important. My partner is white, and we both went down and we wore a mask and we stood at the back. We didn't get close, you know, amongst, because there was like a real close network of people in the middle. Right. We didn't get that close to them. We did stand at the peripherals at the back. So we were safe while we were there. Sort of taking the pandemic seriously as well. But the reason why I felt compelled to be there, partly because of my mum and dad. My mum and dad came to the UK in the 1960s and early 1960s, and I remember my dad having altercations with, you know, some white men who tried to attack him on the streets, you know, and my dad was really bright. He was a bright man, and, you know, he worked for Nottingham City Transport. I think he worked on the railway tracks initially. Mum worked in nursing homes, you know, and they had a hard time with racism in the UK back then. And we were brought up in a racist society, you know, the school system and a lack of education about our history, apart from the slave trade, you know, and how we used to collect money for people in Africa and they were so poor, you know, and that's all we knew about our own culture. One, we were all slaves, and yes, we were all people that look like me in Africa are poor. Yeah. And so I felt really compelled to be there. My parents are both no longer here, but I was there for myself, but I was also there for my parents and my ancestors before them as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's like George Floyd died, was murdered on the streets, and we all saw that brutal video of his life being just taken away on the streets, which is just unbelievable, and it seriously makes me want to cry just even thinking about it. But, you know, in America, their racism is something completely different. It's vile. But in the UK, there's almost a sense about you know, it's equal opportunities here, and what's racism, it's not as bad as in America. No, it's not as bad, I totally agree, but we've still got things to do here. We've still got things to change. And so being present in a pandemic for me was saying, this needs to, there's no other time, even in a pandemic, there's no other time. I need to be there to represent myself, my family, to say that now this is that important, that I'm here at this particular time to say that this needs to stop. We need to change things.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the protests, it was the one in Nottingham, went very, very well. Reports were all positive. People all segregated. They couldn't. You get the media that try to do different angles of pictures. They weren't successful at all with that. So well done to you. Well done to all those that attended there. I personally would have attended, like many others, I'm sure. I mean, one, I'm using the word bravery, but two, I also have a wife who is very I have to be very careful with. So I think about her. But with all that said, I made sure I was active in other ways. But it's interesting you're saying about the difference between America and the UK, because certainly in America it was very obvious. I've always been aware in America, but I've never really been aware in the UK how deep it was. Unaware of the history so much too. I mean, I'm kind of not ashamed, but embarrassed by the ignorance of not, and being aware that school hasn't been educating us as children when we grow up about our past, but still so much we don't know, and unaware. It's so important. It's big history, but the biggest thing is that subtleness of racism, yeah, I think now I see BLM as not going back. It's not like any other different type of protest or different rise or whatever we want to call it. It's not about even just BLM being a hashtag or whatever. It's now about people not allowed to get away with what they've been getting away with before, and they're always going to be questioned. They're always going to be jumped on, because they've always been doing it the other way around. And now now they're facing it. And I think Brexit was probably the start of it. You know, many people who voted Brexit aren't racist. They're not people like that, but they were deemed a racist, and I was certainly one of those. I was guilty. But now they can see also what's happened. So it's great. We've all been educated. It's going to take time for some to actually really, because they've been lived all their life, haven't they? They've lived all. I'm talking about people who are white people who have lived all their life thinking it's hunky dory. We're lovely people, and actually, no, that's not the case.
They are. They are lovely people.
Yeah, no. So I didn't mean lovely people. I mean Britain, as in, you know, there's it's all hunky dory, as in what's going on. No, I didn't mean that. They're not lovely people. Yeah, no. I meant by that it's that when there's a community going on, there is underlying racism going on, but we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, and do you know what? Because I've had conversations about that, and some people have found it very difficult when we talk about white privilege, because it seems that there's some kind of attack on white people. And therefore, well, nobody wants to feel guilty. It was to do with their ancestors that made the decision to do with the transatlantic slave trade. But I feel that, you know, partly we're to blame for you not knowing, because we don't talk about it. We don't talk about the racism that we experience. We talk amongst ourselves, but we don't share it with our white counterparts, because I don't know why we don't. There's some sort of I don't even know what it is. I mean, I remember being with a friend, and we were out somewhere in Derbyshire somewhere on a bike ride, and we were cycling. She was white, and obviously I'm me, and some guys drove past and shouted "nigger" out the window. Now, whether she heard it or not, I don't know. But I heard it. I didn't tell my friend, and I didn't tell my friend. I don't think she heard it because she didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything to her. So I actually suppressed that emotion.
Wow.
And so I think that's what so many of us do. And obviously that's really overt racism. I mean, there's obviously the racism that's really subtle, that you're walking around a supermarket and you're being followed by staff, or, you know, a department store, or I don't know, I can't even think well on top of my head. Or you're just not treated fairly at GP surgery, you know, that kind of stuff, that we have all the time, every day. Not every day, but maybe every week, certainly every month. Yeah. And we just press all those emotions, or we'll do the people closest to. We don't share it. We're not going to be talking about it on social media. And actually, I remember talking about an incident on social media, on Facebook, actually, and a lot of my white friends on there was, how do you know that's racism? questioning my own experience when I've had racism from a very young child. I remember once going off to, this is as an adult, going off to America after 9/11 with a group of friends. And there was me and an Asian girl, and the others were white, from various parts of Europe. And me and my Asian friend got stopped in the UK. Our suitcases were searched. We got stopped in America as well.
Wow.
Twice. The others didn't, just us two. And we looked at each other when we were being searched in America as if to say, we know what this is.
Yeah. But others don't want to set it. My daughter, Anissa, she, every time we've been away, for those in the audience, she's mixed Asian, and she has always had been tagged. And they tag on there, and just for those might not know, if you see SSS on there, which is ironic, but if you see SSS on there, that's a code for security to keep checking you. And she's always been
tagged on what?
So you get marked from going into the airport. They mark you, so you are then a security check. So they're saying, right, okay, this person's just to be checked. Either they're using it as just a, what do they say, random. This is their answer to it. But my daughter has been randomly chosen every time. Interesting question for you then. So we talk about schools. If you were had a chance to introduce a subject, one or two subjects into a school, or change the subject, what would that be, and why?
Yeah, we've kind of covered one of them, or actually both of them really, and one would be sex education for young children, and understanding whenever they actually do the sex education. I'm quite sure when it is, what age it is at schools, but I want women and men to really, young boys and men, and females, to really understand their hormones, the roles of the hormones. Yeah. And if a girl understands her period, and boys, they'll understand, what the hormones do, what's the role, when something isn't right, so she can understand, well, actually, I should be ovulating here, and I should be feeling really upbeat and outgoing, but right now I'm feeling depressed. Well, that's something that's not right. Yeah. So just the basics of understanding that this menstrual cycle, that should be in the curriculum for sex education. And then understanding when it is you get pregnant. It's not that you get pregnant throughout that 28 days. There's a certain time you can get pregnant. And then what will stop you from getting pregnant when you're in your 20s and 30s, when you actually want to have children? Why the contraceptive pill is dangerous for women. And then moving into perimenopause and then menopause, what it is and what you can do to look after yourself. That's what it should be about. I actually don't know what it is about anymore. I mean, when I did it at school, it was just about sex, literally. Yeah. But I don't know what they talk about now, but it should cover all of the spectrums of a woman's life, and also of men as well. Boys, when does their menopause actually begin, and what they could do to look after themselves. And it's much different for men, obviously, but even fertility, their role in impregnating a woman is a lot to do with their lifestyle as well. It's not just about her, and so all of that should be in the curriculum as well. So that's one.
That's a big one. Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, say it again.
That's a big one for sure. That's a good one as well. A good one.
Good. And then there's the second one would be about educating. In when they do history, they should put all the good and all the bad. Everything they did to the Africans, everything they did to the Indians and the Portuguese. Sorry, no, the Portuguese were in part of it. I mean, the people from the Filipinos, all the things that they did, all the bad that they did should be in the history books. We should learn about it all, not just all the good about Britain. It's the British history lessons have been whitewashed. and it needs to change. It's time to tell the real truth, not just part of the truth that they want to have.
Learn about hearing all his wives. That's the important part, isn't it, about history? Learning how many wives he's got. Well, I'm sure we something we can learn from that. But there you go. That I'm not a historian, so. But they're amazing, actually, two subjects, and they actually could be reality if education will listen to us. So maybe we'll hashtag them in and see if we can get any invites, and we'll do some talks. What about that? Because I think that's an important subject, Pamela. You are hitting the nail on the head. It's got to start from education. It has to. Both, boys and girls need to understand. When you're talking about history as well as the hormone side. So good subject. Well done. Good choice in that. So what's going on then for you, Pamela? What's your future? What's your plans? What are you looking to do?
So my plans is to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm looking for some funding, actually, because I love what I do. I love serving women and I love educating them. And when women start to understand their hormones and it's kind of clicking, oh, right. And women don't know this stuff. We were never taught this stuff, you know? And so for when women are learning it for the first time in their 40s and 50s, they're going, right, this makes sense why I feel like this or why I felt like this when I was much younger. And so I love that. And I want to do that even more. But I want to do it, particularly with the COVID and how it's affected sort of, Black, Asian, ethnic minority women, or people, but particularly women, through my area. I want to work with those women that would never, ever be able to pay for my services or come to our retreats that we do. Yeah. And I really want to help them because obviously they're going to be supporting the next generation, so it's like a ripple effect. But I want to help those because they're the ones that are struggling most because of the COVID pandemic in terms of financially, as you know. So that's what I want to do. So I'm actually I applied for funding last week, so fingers crossed I get it. To work with those women. But if I don't get that one, then I'm going to try others and see if we can get some fundings to do some work with some women locally and then hopefully take it broader. So that's kind of my immediate goal. Long term, I want to have my own charity, and my charity would be for young women to educate them about their bodies and tell them about their hormones, and so empowering them to look after themselves so they don't get to 45 and literally have nothing left because they haven't been taught about how to look after their hormones. But I want to do this not just in the UK, I want to do this like in America, in Jamaica, where my parents are from as well.
Okay, oh, that's amazing. Wow, lovely. So how will people get hold of you? What's the best way that they can find you, Pamela?
So the best way you can find me, I guess my email really. So my website is smarterchange.co.uk. And I'm active on Instagram. That's kind of my home. I love it. I love Instagram. I have a big following on either platforms, actually, Instagram and Facebook. So you can follow me on those and you can inbox me on any of those as well.
Great. Brilliant. Okay, well, I will put those links in for you as well. So we'll make sure they're found. Thank you very much for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you for asking me. It's been really good.
No, I'm welcome. And I've learned a lot, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more afterwards, Pamela, because I think there's a lot of things we could do.
Great. I look forward to it. Exciting. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been such fun.
Good. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next session. See you again. Bye-bye.